George Lucas's life is a reminder that the power of imagination can be stronger than any obstacle, that the spark of creativity inside one dreamer can reshape entire generations, and that a boy who was once dismissed, doubted, and nearly lost his future could go on to build an empire of storytelling unlike anything the world had ever seen. His story begins in Modesto, California, where George Walton Lucas Jr. was born on May 14, 1944. He was a shy kid, quiet, and never really considered a genius or someone destined for greatness by the people around him. In fact, young George often felt out of place. He was the type of kid who sat at the back of the classroom, doodling spaceships and daydreaming about adventures far away from the small-town life he knew. His father ran a stationery store and expected George to eventually take over the family business. But George didn't want to sell office supplies. His mind was elsewhere, caught between engines, speed, stories, and visions of worlds no one else could yet see. As a teenager, George Lucas wasn't obsessed with Hollywood. Instead, he was obsessed with racing cars. He loved speed, engines, and the adrenaline that came from driving fast. He wanted to become a professional race car driver, and many thought that was where his life was headed. But fate had a different plan. Just days before his high school graduation, George was involved in a near-fatal car accident. His small Fiat was crushed by another car, and George barely survived. Doctors said if he hadn't been wearing his seatbelt, he wouldn't have lived. That accident changed everything. His dream of becoming a race car driver was gone, but in the silence of recovery, George realized something important. He still had the need for speed, but he wanted to channel it differently. He turned to cameras, stories, and film. That accident became the spark that redirected his life and set him on the road to becoming one of the greatest filmmakers in history. When George Lucas decided to pursue film, not everyone believed in him. In fact, the film industry at that time was small, elite, and dominated by insiders. To many, Lucas seemed like an outsider, just a skinny kid with a passion for visuals and strange ideas. But Lucas was relentless. He enrolled at the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, one of the only colleges in America at the time that treated filmmaking seriously. There, Lucas discovered his gift. He experimented with short films, using editing, sound, and imagery in ways nobody else dared to. One of his early short films, Electronic Labyrinth, THX 1138-4EB, won first prize at the 1967-68 National Student Film Festival. This recognition gave Lucas confidence, but he still had to climb a mountain to be taken seriously in Hollywood. The success of Star Wars in 1977 made George Lucas a household name, but what most people don't realize is that it also placed him in one of the most dangerous positions any creator can face: the burden of expectation. Imagine creating something so groundbreaking, so universally beloved, that the entire world now looks at you and demands more. For many, the pressure would have been unbearable, but for Lucas, it became the fire that forced him to evolve. After Star Wars, George could have walked away, satisfied with having changed the movie industry forever. But Lucas wasn't someone who stopped at success. He was someone who believed that storytelling was a responsibility, that once you had people's attention, you owed them something meaningful. With the resources he now had, Lucas began building the foundations of an empire that was about more than just movies. He wanted to change the way stories were made, shared, and experienced. This is when Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, became the crown jewel of Lucas's vision. During Star Wars, Lucas and his team had to invent visual effects that didn't exist. Hollywood had abandoned the idea of big special effects-driven films after the 1960s. Yet Lucas refused to accept limitations. He gathered a group of dreamers, artists, and engineers in a warehouse in Van Nuys, California, and told them to create the impossible. The result was ILM, a company that redefined visual effects and went on to contribute to hundreds of iconic films: Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, The Avengers, and many more. ILM was proof of Lucas's philosophy: if the tools don't exist, build them yourself. But George Lucas didn't just want to revolutionize visuals. He also wanted to reinvent sound. This led to the creation of Skywalker Sound, a facility that became a sanctuary for sound design. George understood something profound, that movies aren't just about what you see, but what you hear. The hum of a lightsaber, the roar of Chewbacca, the screech of TIE fighters, these weren't just background noises. They became part of our culture, instantly recognizable, permanently etched into memory. That's the genius of Lucas. He cared about the details others overlooked. Even as Lucas built these companies, he also expanded his storytelling. He didn't just stop with Star Wars. Alongside his friend Steven Spielberg, he co-created another legendary franchise, Indiana Jones. When Raiders of the Lost Ark premiered in 1981, audiences were once again transported into an adventure unlike anything they had seen before. Together, Lucas and Spielberg blended history, mythology, and action into a character who became one of the most iconic heroes in cinema. Lucas had now created not one but two of the greatest franchises in film history. George Lucas's life after Star Wars wasn't just about films, it was about vision. Once he had proven himself as a storyteller and business strategist, Lucas became something larger than a filmmaker. He became a symbol of creativity against doubt, of perseverance against rejection, and of imagination against limits. But to understand his journey, you have to dig deeper into the choices he made, the risks, the sacrifices, and the philosophy that guided him. Because George Lucas wasn't just chasing fame. He was building something much greater, a legacy. After the first Star Wars trilogy, 1977 to 1983, Lucas could have easily spent his life basking in success. He was already one of the richest men in Hollywood, his companies were thriving, and his name was etched into history. Yet Lucas never felt satisfied with just being remembered as the guy who made Star Wars. He wanted to push forward, to innovate, to use his resources to open doors for the next generation of dreamers. That's why, instead of living like a Hollywood celebrity, Lucas focused on expanding his creative empire. His decision to stay independent was crucial. Hollywood executives often looked at Lucas as an outsider who didn't play by their rules. And he didn't want to. While most filmmakers relied on studios for funding and distribution, Lucas reinvested the money from Star Wars and American Graffiti to finance his projects himself. This was unheard of at the time. Independence gave him creative control, something he valued above money, fame, or even critical praise. To Lucas, control meant freedom to follow his imagination without compromise. That's a lesson anyone chasing success can learn. If you want to build something truly unique, you have to own your vision. Lucasfilm, his company, became a hub of innovation. With ILM handling groundbreaking effects and Skywalker Sound shaping audio, Lucasfilm was not just producing films but rewriting the rulebook of cinema. Every setback became a laboratory for innovation. For example, when Hollywood said certain effects couldn't be done, Lucas's team invented new cameras, new lenses, new editing tools. Out of necessity, they pioneered what later became digital filmmaking. Long before Hollywood embraced CGI, Lucas was experimenting with it. Many mocked him at first, but today, CGI is the backbone of modern blockbusters. Lucas once again proved that true visionaries are always misunderstood before they are celebrated.